There comes a moment in every life, a crossroad, the kind no one sees, but everyone feels. It's the space between knowing and doing, between what you want and what you're willing to risk for it. Most people stand there forever, weighing the same options, rehearsing the same fears, hoping time will make the decision for them. But time doesn't decide. It collects. It collects the dreams you delayed, the words you didn't say, the chances you promised to take someday. That's the cost of waiting, not failure, not loss, but unlived potential. The truth is simple, you don't need more time. You need more truth. And the truth is this, your life is not shaped by what you hope for, it's shaped by what you choose. Every yes reshapes your path. Every no redraws your future. And every hesitation writes a version of your life that ends too early. You keep calling it timing. But really, it's fear wearing patience as a disguise. The people who change their lives aren't the ones who wait for signs. They're the ones who decide and build the signs themselves. So here's the truth. Your destiny isn't hiding. It's waiting for your decision. Because life doesn't move until you do. And the path doesn't appear until your feet begin to walk it. This is not about luck. This is not about chance. This is about courage, the courage to move while you're still uncertain. Because hesitation is quiet defeat. And motion is how you win unseen battles. Every moment you wait is a moment someone else begins. And the world only rewards those who move before they're ready. So decide. Not perfectly. Just honestly. Because the second you do, everything changes. This is where destiny begins. Chapter 1. The Crossroads. You've been here before. Maybe not this exact place, but one that felt just like it. That heavy pause between wanting and doing. Between the idea that excites you and the action that scares you. You call it thinking. But it's really a hesitation dressed as preparation. Because deep down, you already know what to do. You just don't like what the truth demands. Every destiny begins here, at a crossroads. One path feels safe, familiar, predictable. The other, uncertain, risky, alive. And most people spend their entire lives building a house right in the middle. They call it balance. But it's really paralysis. You tell yourself you're waiting for the right time. For a sign. For clarity. But the truth? Time doesn't send signs, it sends consequences. And clarity only arrives after you move. Every moment you hesitate, life quietly chooses for you. That's the hidden cost of waiting. You lose the right to shape your own story. You think indecision protects you from regret. But indecision is regret in slow motion. It's the softest kind of self-destruction, the one you can justify. You tell yourself, I'm thinking it through. But what you're really doing is trying to find a version of courage that doesn't feel like fear. And there isn't one. Fear never disappears before you decide. It only changes its shape after you do. That's the secret every successful person already knows. They don't move because they're fearless. They move because they've made peace with being afraid. You can't outthink uncertainty. You can only outmove it. The more you stand still, the heavier the crossroads becomes. Every unmade choice gains weight, and eventually, it crushes you under the what-if. Regret doesn't always scream. Sometimes it just whispers, this could have been something. And those words stay with you long after the opportunity is gone. You see, destiny doesn't announce itself. It tests you, quietly. It hides inside small decisions that don't look important until years later. The message, the invitation, the call, they're never loud. They're moments. Brief, fragile, ordinary. But inside them, everything waits to change. The question isn't, will life give me another chance? It's, will I recognize it when it arrives? You think you'll know when the moment comes. But the truth is, you already missed a few. The job you didn't apply for. The message you didn't send. The risk you postponed. That's how hesitation works. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It erodes you in pieces. One delayed dream at a time. And one day, you wake up with a life full of almost everything. Almost started. Almost ready. I'm almost happy. But almost is a ghost that never stops haunting you. It whispers what could have been, and you can hear it every time you try to rest. The truth is, the cost of waiting isn't time, it's becoming less of yourself. Every time you delay a decision, you teach your mind that fear is stronger than you. And the mind obeys what it's trained to believe. So each hesitation reinforces the same lie, that safety is better than growth. But safety has a price too. It costs you expansion, curiosity, evolution. It costs you. Look around your life right now. Everything you love came from a decision. Everything you resent came from avoiding one. So the crossroads isn't a place, it's a pattern. Every morning you wake up and stand there again. You decide who to be, how much truth to speak, how much courage to live with. And whether you realize it or not, those small choices become your destiny in real time. You don't control outcomes, you control directions. And directions decide destinations. It's not about being certain. It's about being committed. Commitment is how you tell the universe, I'm ready to participate in my own becoming. You've spent enough years rehearsing courage. Now it's time to perform it. Because destiny doesn't wait for confidence, it responds to motion. You think you need motivation. You don't. You need a decision strong enough to survive your doubt. Decide, and doubt loses power. Delay, and doubt multiplies. That's how simple it is. And that's how hard it is. Every dream begins as defiance, the refusal to let fear have the final word. You won't know if it's the right path until you walk it. But the wrong path teaches you faster than standing still. So take the step. Even if it shakes. Even if no one claps. Because movement, not applause, is the proof of faith. Faith isn't waiting for certainty. It's walking with doubt and refusing to stop. And once you move, life begins to move with you. Doors open, timing aligns, people appear. Not because fate decided it, because you did. Every decision you make rewires your story. And every delay rewrites it for you. So if you're standing at a crossroad right now, and you're waiting for a sign, this is it. Not because I'm saying it, but because deep down, you already knew it. You've been carrying the answer this whole time. You were just hoping someone else would say it first. But courage doesn't echo, it originates. And this is your moment to originate. To choose movement over memory. To build, not wonder. Every destiny begins here, with one honest choice. Not a perfect one, just one made in truth. Because once you choose, you'll realize it was never about the outcome. It was about proving to yourself that you can trust your own direction. That's what the crossroads teaches you, that indecision isn't safe. It's surrender. And you've surrendered long enough. Now, it's time to rise. You don't have to know where it leads. You just have to move. Because motion creates meaning, and meaning creates momentum. So take the first step, even if it's small. Because small steps have built greater destinies than hesitation ever will. And as you move, remember this: every second you wait, life moves on. Not away from you, but without you. The next chapter of your life won't begin with inspiration. It'll begin with a decision. And that's where we go next, into the truth you've avoided the longest. Because what you call patience has quietly become procrastination. And time. I have been watching. Chapter 2: The Illusion of Time. You tell yourself you have time. That tomorrow will still be yours. That the moment you're waiting for will eventually appear, as if the universe is holding a reservation in your name. But time doesn't keep your promises. It keeps its own. Every hour that feels slow is already leaving you. Every hesitation is quietly aging your potential. We grow up believing time is generous. That there will always be more of it, more chances, more beginnings, more later. It's a comforting lie. A beautiful one. Because it lets you avoid the discomfort of now. You say, I'll start when it's easier. I'll speak when I'm ready. I'll leave when it feels right. But time isn't waiting for your alignment. It's moving while you rehearse your courage. The illusion of time is that it appears infinite precisely because you're wasting it. When you finally start valuing it, you see how small it really is. Look back. That year you said flew by wasn't faster than the others. You were simply less present inside it. Presence stretches time. Avoidance collapses it. That's why childhood felt endless and adulthood feels like a blur. When you stop noticing, time stops expanding. You keep saying later. But later is the world's most expensive word. It costs you the one thing you can never earn again. Every dream you postpone charges interest you don't see until it's too late. Time doesn't punish you for waiting. It simply leaves without you. And when it does, it doesn't announce its departure, it just replaces possibilities with memories. That's why nostalgia hurts. It's the body remembering the bill time already collected. You think you have time to decide, but indecision is already a decision. Every not yet becomes a quiet never. And one day you realize the things you planned to do at 25 don't fit the person you became at 35. Time changes you faster than you expect. And while you're waiting for the perfect moment, you become someone else entirely. That's the real illusion. You think you're delaying an action, but you're really delaying yourself. You won't get this version of you back. The curiosity, the hunger, the precise blend of hope and fear that exists only now. Every moment has its own chemistry. Miss it, and even success won't taste the same later. That's why the right time is never coming, because you keep changing faster than your plans. So what do? You move anyway. You act in the imperfection of the moment. You stop treating time like a parent to please and start treating it like a partner to collaborate with. You don't need to manage time, you need to respect it. Respect isn't about clocks. It's about attention. Where your attention goes, your life goes. The illusion of time disappears the moment you realize attention is the real currency. You can't save time. You can only spend it well. Spend it on the call you've been avoiding, on the project that scares you, on the relationship that needs honesty. Because unspent time becomes regret. And regret compounds faster than interest. You keep telling yourself you're being patient. But patience isn't waiting, it's preparing while you wait. If you're not preparing, you're just postponing. The world moves even when you don't. Someone somewhere is building what you keep imagining. That's not competition. That's a reminder. Time rewards participation, not intention. So participate. Even if it's messy. Even if it's small. Because every action is a hand raised to life itself, saying, I'm here. And life always responds to presence. You've been taught to fear running out of time. But the real danger is running out of urgency. Urgency isn't panic. It's clear. It's the moment you stop negotiating with delay. You realize that later is a myth built by fear to feel like safety. And the longer you believe it, the smaller your future becomes. So look at the clock differently. Not as pressure, but as a perspective. Every tick is permission, not punishment. Permission to decide, to begin to live. And if you ever wonder how to reclaim lost time, don't chase the past. Just stop wasting the present. You can't rewind, but you can redefine. Time doesn't owe you consistency. It only offers opportunity. So take it, before hesitation spends it for you. You keep asking, when will I be ready? But readiness is a byproduct of movement. The moment you act, time starts serving you instead of testing you. You stop chasing balance and start creating alignment. And that's when time expands again, when you give it purpose. You'll feel it. Days become fuller, hours slower, moments brighter. Because you're finally living inside time, not running behind it. So breathe. The next second is already becoming history. What you do with it decides what the future remembers. This is how you end the illusion, by choosing to be present enough that time can't trick you anymore. It's not about racing the clock. It's about refusing to waste it. Every breath is a deadline disguised as grace. And grace always runs out for those who don't notice it. So notice. Move. Decide. Because the only thing more painful than running out of time is realizing you never used it. And as you step out of this illusion, you'll start to see something clearer, that the enemy was never time itself. I hesitated. And hesitation lives in one word, maybe. Now that you know time was never the problem, let's face the real one. The word that holds more lost dreams than failure ever did. Chapter 3. The Weight of Maybe. Maybe. The smallest word with the heaviest consequence. It sounds harmless, gentle, reasonable, flexible. But maybe it is the word that quietly buries momentum. You use it to soften decisions, to keep possibilities open, to sound thoughtful when you're really afraid. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe later. Maybe when I'm ready. Every maybe you whisper adds another stone to the pile you carry. Until one day you realize you're not moving forward. You're just learning to walk under the weight of hesitation. You tell yourself maybe it buys you time. But really, it gives you comfort. And comfort has an expiration date. You think maybe keeps options alive. But it actually keeps you undecided, a life lived half in, half out. You stand between doors, hoping one will open wider than the other. But doors don't move, you do. And until you choose, you stay in the hallway, watching everyone else walk through theirs. Maybe it is the language of fear pretending to be wisdom. It dresses like patience. It speaks like caution. But underneath, it's just the sound of trust you refuse to give yourself. You think maybe it protects you from being wrong. But it mostly protects you from being right. Because being right would mean admitting you could have started sooner. The weight of maybe grows quietly. At first, it feels like a reflection. Then it becomes delayed. Then, denial. You stop noticing how often you say it. It sneaks into your thoughts, your conversations, your identity. Maybe becomes who you are. Someone is always almost ready. But life doesn't pay much attention. It rewards alignment. And alignment requires decisions. Every step you don't take gathers dust. Every chance you don't claim grows roots somewhere else. Opportunity ages like fruit. Leave it long enough, and even the sweetest one spoils. Still, you cling to maybe because it makes failure feel optional. You tell yourself, if I never decide, I never lose. But indecision is a loss. You just experience it slowly, without the mercy of clarity. The people who move ahead of you aren't braver, they're just lighter. They dropped the maybes. They stopped mistaking confusion for complexity. They stopped waiting for certainty to bless their choices. They simply decided, and let movement teach them what thinking never could. Because clarity is earned through action, not granted through waiting. Every time you say maybe, you trade momentum for the illusion of control. You think you're being careful. But all you're really doing is practicing hesitation. Soon, hesitation becomes a habit. Habit becomes identity. And identity becomes destiny. You start calling yourself a perfectionist, a planner, a realist. But deep down you know the truth. You're afraid to choose. Because choice ends possibility. And the ending possibility feels like losing freedom. But freedom without direction is just a prettier kind of trap. The moment you understand that, you start to see how much of your life was paused, not by circumstance, but by permission you never gave yourself. You've been waiting for a sign, a feeling, a guarantee. But the only sign that ever mattered was the restlessness you keep ignoring. That's not impatience. That's your soul trying to leave the waiting room. And it will keep knocking until you answer. You think maybe it protects peace. But peace doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from alignment. You can't feel peaceful while living out of sync with what you know is right. Maybe is the fence you build between knowing and doing. And the longer you sit on it, the more painful it becomes. The moment you climb down, even if you fall, you start healing. Because decisions are medicine. They cleanse the weight of maybe. You don't need to know the entire road. You just need to know your next step. Maybe I will tell you to wait for certainty. But certainty is born after courage, not before it. Courage doesn't erase fear. It simply refuses to obey it. You don't become confident first. You decide first. Confidence is built from surviving your own choices. So if you're standing in another moment of maybe, and the world feels too heavy to move, remember this: you are not tired. You're stuck. And the cure for stuck is movement. Small. Imperfect. Now. That's how you end the weight of maybe. You stop negotiating with it. Because indecision will always make you feel responsible for outcomes that never even existed. You'll imagine every failure twice, once in fear and once in reality. But when you finally act, you realize the first one was never real. You've lost too much time to ghosts. It's time to see what's real. Action isn't arrogance. It's faith in motion. And every person who ever built something meaningful once stood where you are, heavy with maybe, but ready to move anyway. They decided not because they were sure, but because they were done being unsure. That's where you are now. Done doubting. Done waiting. Done asking for permission. The next moment is yours to define. And when you choose, you'll feel it. The weight lifts, the air changes, and for the first time, life begins to respond. You'll realize that all along, the universe wasn't withholding clarity, it was withholding consequence until you decide. Because destiny doesn't unfold for thinkers. It unfolds for movers. Maybe it was never protection. It was delayed disguised as logic. And logic without courage builds nothing. So let this be the moment you drop it, the final maybe. Let it hit the ground and shatter into all the versions of you who almost began. Then breathe. And step forward lighter. Because once you stop saying maybe, you start saying yes to movement, to momentum, to become. And that's when destiny finally hears you. You've carried hesitation long enough. Now, feel what it's like to move. In the next chapter, you'll learn the truth every creator, fighter, and survivor already knows. Momentum isn't given. It's chosen. Chapter 4: The Law of Motion. Everything moves. Even the things that look still are only pretending. The world breathes in motion. Waves, wind, heartbeat, seasons, nothing survives by staying the same. But somewhere along the way, you were taught that stillness means safety. That waiting means wisdom. That motion can wait until you're ready. Except readiness never comes first. It's built through movement. The first law of motion is simple. Nothing changes until something moves. You already know this in your body. Stand still long enough, and even breath feels heavy. Move, and suddenly the weight shifts. That's not science, it's the truth. Momentum is the medicine for fear. Fear thrives in stillness. Because stillness is where imagination fills the silence with everything that could go wrong. The moment you act, the noise changes shape. Fear stops predicting and starts reacting. And reaction is weaker than anticipation. That's why movement matters more than confidence. Confidence is the echo of repeated motion. You don't think your way into courage, you move your way into it. You've spent so long analyzing your path that the road beneath you has grown cold. Life doesn't wait for perfect timing. It rewards the rhythm of participation. Every motion, no matter how small, creates a shift too subtle for the eye but too real for destiny to ignore. That's why the world responds faster to the one who begins than the one who plans. Movement signals belief. And belief, not certainty, is what draws life toward you. You keep asking for direction, but direction isn't found in maps, it's discovered in motion. Walk one step, and the next appears. Hesitate, and the path fades again. That's the law. You can't negotiate with it. You can only obey it. When you move, you learn. When you learn, you adjust. And every adjustment turns confusion into clarity. That's how motion builds mastery. Not in leaps, in repetitions. Each decision, each attempt, adds weight to your momentum. You stop needing motivation because movement itself becomes proof. That's what most people never understand. Motion creates meaning. Meaning keeps you moving. That loop is how destinies are built. Every motion has two purposes, to teach you and to test you. When nothing seems to work, it isn't punishment, it's refinement. You're learning how to carry speed without losing balance. And balance isn't found in pausing, it's found in adjusting while in motion. You can't steer a parked car. You turn as you go. That's why your next step matters more than your best plan. Plans are static. Steps are alive. Each one rewrites your trajectory. The people you admire, they didn't master clarity, they mastered continuation. They fell, they recalculated, they kept moving. Because momentum forgives mistakes that hesitation never will. You can correct the motion. Maybe you can't correct it. Momentum is mercy. It doesn't ask if you're ready, it rewards you. The smallest motion breaks the hardest inertia. You don't have to move fast. You just have to move now. Because while you're waiting for motivation, someone else is creating momentum. And momentum changes everything. It turns doubt into data, failure into feedback, effort into evidence. Once you feel it, you'll never crave permission again. Because you realize no one was keeping you still but you. You called it timing. You called it fear. You called it discipline. But what you really meant was hesitation. And hesitation can't survive where movement begins. Start, and everything static inside you begins to melt. Ideas become actions. Dreams become directions. The impossible becomes measurable. Because once you move, you give reality something to respond to. The world mirrors motion. That's why closed doors open only for the hands that knock twice. That's why luck only finds those already walking. You create your rhythm by moving through resistance. Resistance isn't a wall. It's the shape motion must carve through to grow. Without resistance, momentum has nothing to define itself against. So when life pushes back, don't stop. That's proof you're alive inside the law. Because the law of motion doesn't just move you forward. It keeps you honest. It exposes every place you hesitate. Every place you think is too long. And that's the point. The law doesn't exist to make movement easy. It exists to make growth unavoidable. If you keep showing up, it keeps teaching you. You'll stumble, you'll fail, you'll doubt. But the difference between you and who you used to be is that now you stumble forward. Forward is enough. Forward is always enough. Because forward becomes faith. When you move, you stop asking if you're ready, you start realizing you already were. And readiness grows every mile you take. This is how movement transforms identity. You become who you act like. not who you wait to feel like. That's the secret hidden in the law. Motion creates proof, and proof builds belief. You can't manifest what you won't move for. So walk, run, crawl if you have to, because no one remembers those who stood still. Destiny is drawn to direction. It doesn't care if the first step is perfect, only that it's honest. The law doesn't reward perfection. It rewards participation. So participate in your own becoming. Don't wait for signs. Don't beg for timing. Move, and timing will align itself around your steps. That's the miracle of momentum. It bends coincidence into coordination. You start calling it fate, but it's really just proof that life follows movers. And every move you make becomes another law rewritten in your favor. You've learned how to move. Now you'll learn why motion feels dangerous, why progress always awakens its oldest rival. Because the moment you start to move, fear wakes up too. It whispers that forward might be failure, but that's a lie you're ready to outgrow. Chapter 5. The Fear of Wrong. Fear doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers in words that sound wise. It says, "Wait until you're sure. Think it through again. What if this isn't right?" It hides behind logic, wears the mask of caution, and calls itself preparation. But fear's favorite disguise is the pursuit of being right. You don't realize it at first. You just want to make good decisions, to protect what you've built, to avoid regret. But soon, you're no longer chasing growth, you're chasing certainty. And certainty doesn't exist. It's a story fear invented to keep you safe, by keeping you still. The fear of being wrong has stolen more dreams than failure ever could. Because failure teaches, but fear prevents learning altogether. You tell yourself you're being patient, when really you're postponing. You tell yourself you're being strategic, when really you're scared. The world will call it discipline. But you can feel it, that tightening in your chest every time you almost move. It's not discipline. It's doubtful. You've mistaken overthinking for intelligence, hesitation for wisdom, and fear for responsibility. You've built a temple around the question, "What if I'm wrong?" And you pray to it every time you feel ready to act. You kneel to the illusion that being right is more important than becoming real. But the truth doesn't wait for your permission. It arrives the moment you move. The fear of wrong is heavy because it asks you to carry every outcome before it happens. You live tomorrow's pain before tomorrow arrives. You rehearse disaster as if it were destiny. And in the process, you end up suffering twice, once in imagination, and once in reality. But reality rarely hurts as much as the rehearsal. You fear what you can't control, yet control has never existed. It's the illusion we use to calm uncertainty. Life doesn't punish mistakes. It punishes inaction. Because motion, even imperfect, creates corrections. Mistakes can be redirected. But hesitation only multiplies. You can't steer a thought. You can only steer a step. That's why motion keeps you honest. It reveals truth faster than planning ever will. And that's what fear hates most, truth. Because truth makes fear small. You've spent so long trying to make the right move that you forgot movement itself is what makes it right. Decisions aren't judged by outcomes. They're judged by alignment. You can make the wrong choice and still end up exactly where you belong, because action always creates insight, and insight always leads home. But you'll never know that if you keep waiting for permission to begin. You think waiting protects you. But it just delays the version of you who already knows what to do. Fear keeps saying, don't risk it. But risk is how you learn who you are. The people who look fearless aren't immune to being wrong. They've just decided that being wrong hurts less than being still. And they're right. Because failure is finite. But fear is forever. Fear survives by feeding on uncertainty. And uncertainty disappears the moment you decide. So the next time you hear that whisper, the one that says, "What if this isn't right?" answer it softly. I'll learn if it isn't. You'll learn more from one wrong turn than 1,000 hours of hesitation. Because the wrong path always reveals something, a lesson, a limit, a layer of strength you didn't know existed. Fear hides those gifts behind the illusion of safety. It tells you the safest way to win is not to play at all. But safety is a slow surrender. Every time you avoid risk, you shrink your reach. The walls close in quietly, and you call it peace. But peace built from avoidance isn't peace, it's pause. You can't live your way into destiny while tiptoeing around decisions. Destiny is built on movement, and movement requires risk. That's the trade you've been avoiding. To become anything great, you must be willing to be wrong in public. You fear looking foolish, but the truth is, no one's watching as closely as you think. The world is too busy wrestling with its own fear of wrong. And the few who notice your courage will remember your effort, not your errors. Perfection might impress people, but vulnerability connects them. And connection is where purpose begins to breathe. So let the world see you stumble. Let them watch you recover. That recovery will inspire them more than your flawless performance ever could. Because everyone wants proof that imperfection can still move mountains. Be that proof. Fear will keep visiting. It never fully disappears. But once you stop negotiating with it, it loses authority. Fear is loudest when you're closest to change. So when it starts to rise again, smile. It means you're on the right path. Let fear walk beside you if it must. But never let it lead. Because motion is how you remind fear who's in charge. Every step you take proves that the unknown isn't the enemy, stagnation is. Courage doesn't silence fear. It speaks louder. It says, I may not know what happens next, but I'm willing to find out. That sentence is how destinies are rewritten. Because the moment you're no longer afraid of being wrong, you become unstoppable. You stop chasing perfection. You start chasing alignment. You stop begging for signs. You start creating signals. That's the shift. Fear shrinks in the face of consistency. Every time you act again, the voice gets quieter. Eventually, it's just background noise, something you hear, but no longer obey. You'll still feel it. But it won't feel like a cage anymore. It'll feel like gravity, something to move through, not something to surrender to. That's what freedom really is. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to let it define your direction. And when that happens, you stop asking, what if it goes wrong, and start asking, what if it goes right? That's the language of transformation. Every miracle begins as a risk someone decided to take anyway. You've waited long enough for certainty that will never come. Now it's time to live like the person who can't be broken by being wrong. Because the only real mistake left is not moving at all. You've learned how fear manipulates movement. Now it's time to master the opposite. The discipline that keeps motion aligned with meaning. Chapter 6. The Discipline of Choice. Discipline has always been misunderstood. People think it's about restriction, control, denial. But true discipline isn't about what you say no to. It's about what you say yes to, again and again, especially when it's no longer convenient. Choice without discipline is chaos disguised as freedom. You can choose anything, but if you don't stay with what matters, your freedom becomes noise. Discipline is how you teach freedom to have form. Because the power of choice isn't in the options. It's in the follow-through. Every path looks beautiful at the beginning. Every dream feels possible when it's new. But what separates wish from destiny is the discipline to keep choosing after the excitement fades. Every destiny is built from repetition. The small, quiet yes you give yourself daily. That's the real test of decision, not how loudly you start, but how consistently you continue. You've made choices before. Good ones. Bold ones. But then came the distractions, the old habits dressed as comfort, the easy exits disguised as options. And slowly, your decision began to fade under the noise of maybe later. That's where most people quit, not because they lost belief, but because they lost rhythm. Discipline is rhythm. It's the agreement you make with your future self and honor in the present. You can't discipline emotion, it will always rise and fall. But you can discipline direction. You can keep showing up, even when passion has gone quiet. That's what mastery looks like. Not fire every day, but friction, the gentle resistance of staying the course when everything else tempts you to stop. Because passion builds beginnings, but discipline sustains destinies. You won't always feel inspired, but you can always remain intentional. And intention, repeated long enough, becomes transformation. Every choice you repeat carves a pattern in your mind. That pattern becomes identity. You are what you commit to, not what you imagine, not what you promise, but what you practice. So if you don't like who you're becoming, don't wait for motivation. Change what you repeatedly choose. Discipline is a quiet revolution. It's not glamorous. It's not loud. But it's the only proof that your decision was real. Every time you honor your choice, you tell your mind, I'm serious about this. And your mind believes what you repeat. That's how faith is built, not through belief first, but through behavior. You act, then you believe. And once belief catches up, discipline becomes devotion. That's why the strongest people aren't the most motivated, they're the most consistent. They don't depend on emotion, they depend on systems. Because emotion fails in chaos, but discipline thrives in it. It anchors you when the waves rise. It reminds you who you said you'd be when distraction tries to rewrite your story. And the world will try. It will tempt you with shortcuts, with applause, with comfort. But you can't chase everything and still call it destiny. Destiny requires focus. And focus is the child of discipline. Discipline says, this is my path. And keeps walking, even when the crowd turns the other way. Because the crowd always moves toward ease. But ease never built anything eternal. Ease builds comfort. Discipline builds character. And character is what keeps you standing when motivation runs out. You won't always see results right away. That's the second test of choice, patience. You have to keep choosing long before the world notices. The harvest always comes, but never on your schedule. That's why discipline feels thankless at first. You're investing in evidence that doesn't exist yet. But every unseen effort is a seed you've already planted. And when the time is right, you won't need to force the results. They'll recognize you. Because the universe always returns what you've practiced with conviction. That's the hidden truth. Discipline is a form of faith. It says, I believe enough to stay consistent, even when nothing seems to change. And slowly, the change becomes you. Your habits rewrite your identity. Your choices become your compass. And one day, you wake up realizing you no longer have to try to be disciplined. You simply are. That's evolution. When effort turns into instinct. But don't mistake discipline for punishment. It's not about deprivation. It's about direction. It's how you turn chaos into clarity. You don't build freedom by avoiding rules. You build it by choosing the right ones to obey. And the highest rule you can ever follow is the one you give yourself. That's self-respect. When your daily actions match your highest truth. That's when discipline stops feeling like pressure and starts feeling like peace. Because real peace isn't passive, it's the calm that comes from alignment. Discipline and destiny speak the same language, repetition. They both ask the same question, can you keep showing up? Because success doesn't come from what you occasionally do. It comes from what you repeatedly commit to, even when it's quiet. Every consistent act is another message sent to life itself, saying, I'm serious. And life always responds to seriousness. That's why the moment you stop dabbling and start devoting, everything around you begins to shift. Discipline turns potential into progress. Progress turns confidence into conviction. And conviction turns destiny into reality. That's the sequence. That's the law. You can't skip any part. You just have to stay with it. Every small act of discipline is an act of defiance against your lesser self. And that's how you win the inner war. Not by overpowering temptation, but by outlasting it. Discipline doesn't shout. It whispers, stay. Stay when it's boring. Stay when it's hard. Stay when it feels unseen. Because every time you stay, you grow stronger roots. And strong roots don't fear storms. That's the reward of discipline, stability. The kind that doesn't collapse when results take longer than expected. The kind that makes you trustworthy to yourself. Because once you trust yourself, every choice becomes easier. You don't waste energy debating anymore. You already know what alignment feels like. That's when life starts to flow again, not because it's easier, but because you've stopped resisting your own direction. And now, you're ready for the next evolution of choice. Discipline taught you how to hold your path. But the next lesson is learning how to let go when the path begins to change. Chapter 7. The Edge of Change. Change never asks if you're ready. It arrives like a tide, quiet at first, then undeniable. One morning, something inside you whispers, this can't be it. Not because your life is falling apart, but because your soul has outgrown its walls. That's where change begins, not in chaos, but in discomfort. A slow ache that tells you you've stayed somewhere too long. You start to notice it in small ways. The same routine that once felt safe now feels heavy. The conversations that once filled you now drain you. The mirror starts asking questions you can't keep avoiding it. This is the edge of change. It doesn't look dramatic. It looks uneasy. But unease is evolution's first language. You keep trying to silence it. You work harder, stay busier, pretend everything still fits. But deep down, you know when something has ended. And pretending not to know hurts worse than letting go. That's the paradox. We beg for growth, but we fear the stretch. Because every transformation requires a small death first. The death of certainty. The death of identity. The death of who you were before you decided to rise. And most people stop there, at the edge. They circle around the decision, rationalize it, delay it. They build homes on the border between comfort and courage. But destiny doesn't live in safety. It lives just past the line of what's familiar. That's why the edge of change feels like falling. Because it is. Falling away from what no longer serves you, toward what's waiting to begin. You can't take your old balance into a new chapter. Every leap requires a new rhythm. And fear will always try to keep you grounded. It will whisper, "What if you lose everything?" But it won't mention what you'll lose if you stay. Staying seems safe, until you realize it's the slowest way to disappear. Because life doesn't stop when you do. It simply moves on without you. You weren't built to repeat the same story forever. You were built to evolve. And evolution isn't comfortable. It's raw. It's uncertain. It's necessary. There comes a moment when comfort starts feeling like confinement. When safety starts sounding like silence. When you realize the only thing scarier than change is staying the same. That's when you know you've reached the edge. You stand at the edge, and everything behind you starts to echo. All the almost. All the waiting. All the versions of you that wanted to move, but didn't. You feel their weight, but you also feel something else rising. That pulse in your chest isn't fear. It's permission. Change doesn't need your certainty. It needs your surrender. The moment you stop fighting for control, you remember how to flow. And flow is what life has been asking for all along. Every ending you feared was really an invitation. Every breakdown was the beginning rearranged. Because life doesn't take. It trades. It removes what's too small to make room for what's next. The edge isn't punishment. It's the point where destiny checks your readiness. You can't cross it with half a heart. You either leap or you don't. But once you do, the ground appears beneath your courage. That's how it works. Faith builds the bridge while your feet are already moving. You won't feel ready. You'll just feel pulled. Follow that pull. It's not random, it's the gravity of growth. Growth is always louder inside you than the world around you. That's why the people who stay behind will call you impulsive, restless, ungrateful. But they're not judging you, they're protecting their own fear. Change confronts people who've made peace with standing still. So don't expect applause at the edge. The only sound you'll hear is your own heart deciding. And that sound is the beginning of becoming. The edge of change is the birthplace of every reinvention. The moment when bravery becomes memory, and memory becomes proof. You won't see the future clearly yet. You're not supposed to. Vision is a gift given to those already walking. That's how destiny hides itself, in movement. You move first. Then you understand. And when you finally cross that invisible line, you realize the fear never left. It just started running behind you. Because once you're in motion, fear has to keep up. You stop asking, "What if I fall?" and start thinking, "What if I fly?" You feel it, the rush, the release, the realization that you were never meant to stay small. Change isn't the enemy. It's the evidence that you're alive. Nothing evolves that isn't meant to continue. The only mistake is resisting what's meant to refine you. You don't have to control the storm. You just have to remember, you are the sky. And the skies don't break. They are clear. This is what the edge teaches you, that the unknown isn't empty. It's full of everything you've been asking for, just wrapped in the disguise of risk. So leap. Not because it's easy. Because staying has become too small for your spirit. You can't carry old certainty into a new world. Let it go. Let it fall. Let it free you. Chapter 8. The Cost of Delay. Every moment you wait, your potential pays interest. You don't lose time, you trade it. You trade it for hesitation, for comfort, for the illusion that the right moment will feel right. But time isn't kind to hesitation. It doesn't pause when you do. It keeps moving, quietly collecting the debt of every dream you postponed. That's the hidden cost of delay. It doesn't show up as pain at first. It shows up as distance. Distance between who you are and who you were meant to be. Every delayed decision creates another version of you waiting in silence, watching your courage fade. And every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," you teach your destiny to wait too. But destiny doesn't wait forever. You think you're protecting yourself from failure, but really, you're protecting your fear from exposure. Fear thrives in stillness. And delay is its favorite disguise. You tell yourself it's preparation, that you're just gathering strength, waiting for alignment. But alignment doesn't come to the waiting. It comes to the moving. Readiness isn't what precedes action. It's what action creates. You can't become ready by thinking, only by beginning. And every second spent convincing yourself you're not ready yet is another second your purpose goes unfed. Purpose starves in hesitation. It breathes through participation. That's why delay feels heavy, because you're carrying the weight of everything you were meant to start. And that weight doesn't go away until you move. The longer you wait, the louder regret begins to whisper. Not in anger, but in quiet reminders. This could have been done. This could have been built. This could have been you. And someday, you'll look back and realize the hardest part wasn't doing it, it was waiting to begin. Delay steals silently. It doesn't take everything at once. It takes in fragments, a little of your confidence, a little of your momentum, a little of your belief. Until one day, you wake up lighter, but emptier. That's the quiet tragedy of delay. You don't feel it leaving, you just notice what's missing later. Time has no mercy for hesitation. It rewards the mover, not the watcher. And the truth is, you already know what to do. You're just afraid of what will change once you do it. That's the real cost of delay, not what you lose, but what you postpone becoming. Every moment spent doubting is a moment your destiny stands still, waiting for you to remember who you are. You don't need more signs. You need movement. Because waiting won't make the mountain smaller, it only makes your strength weaker. And life will not slow down to match your hesitation. It will pass, and with it, the versions of yourself that could have existed. There's a price for every hesitation. The world keeps a record, not of your intentions, but of your movements. You may not see the cost immediately, but delay compounds. Every time you resist action, you strengthen resistance itself. The habit of waiting becomes the architecture of your future. And before you know it, the comfort that once protected you becomes the prison that defines you. That's how dreams die, not in explosions, but in quiet postponements. You think you're keeping your options open, but delay doesn't preserve options. It erases them. The longer you wait, the smaller the window becomes. The smaller the window becomes, the more courage it takes to crawl through. And one day it's gone. You can always start again, but you can never return to the exact moment when you were meant to begin. That's the true cost of delay, the version of you that never got to exist because you hesitated too long. You were built for motion, not maintenance. Every instinct inside you is wired for evolution. That's why it hurts to hold back. Because your soul knows what your fear keeps denying, you're not meant to repeat. You're meant to rise. And rise doesn't wait. The longer you delay, the harder it becomes to trust yourself. Because self-trust is built through evidence, through showing up, through keeping promises, through motion. Delay erodes that trust until you start believing you can't follow through. But you can. You always could. You just forgot that confidence isn't the fuel, it's the result. Action is the ignition. You don't need to feel ready. You need to start moving. Because clarity doesn't come before action. It comes because of it. Every decision creates a ripple. Every motion attracts meaning. And the moment you move, life rushes to meet you. Delay is doubtful. Motion is declaration. Every step says, I'm done waiting for the perfect time, I'll create it. Because time is loyal to the ones who move. It bends. It expands. It multiplies for those who act. That's the paradox. The faster you begin, the slower life feels. Because when you're living in motion, you stop counting seconds and start collecting significance. Don't wait for alignment. Create alignment by moving forward anyway. Don't wait for certainty. Prove it through participation. Every second spent hesitating is one you could have spent building. And every decision you avoid is a decision you've already made to stay the same. So stop negotiating with time. Start partnering with it. Start now. Even if it's messy. Even if it's small. Because the cost of delay will always be greater than the risk of beginning. You've paid the cost of waiting. Now you'll learn the reward of motion. How every small step builds speed, and how progress becomes its own power. Chapter 9. The Momentum Paradox. The moment you begin again, everything shifts. You don't notice it at first. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. But something inside you exhales, the quiet relief of motion. Because the truth is simple. Nothing feels heavier than stillness. Even small movements lightens the soul. Momentum doesn't need speed. It needs commitment. The smallest consistent motion is stronger than the grandest postponed plan. That's the paradox. You don't build momentum by moving fast. You build it by refusing to stop. Momentum isn't the reward for progress. It's the engine of it. The moment you act, life starts echoing back. Doors you couldn't see before begin to open. People you need appear. Ideas sharpen. Paths align. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Movement alters perception. You see opportunities that hesitation hid. That's the first truth of momentum. Life rewards rhythm. The second truth? Momentum doesn't erase doubt. It just moves faster than it. You'll still feel resistance, but it won't rule you anymore. Because once you start moving, fear becomes background noise. It still talks, but you stop listening. You realize it was never about silencing fear, it was about outpacing it. That's the paradox. Progress doesn't require perfect confidence. Confidence grows from imperfect progress. You don't wait for belief to move. You move until belief arrives. Every step, every repetition, builds proof. And proof is the most powerful form of motivation. Because once you have evidence, you don't need reassurance. You stop asking, "Can I?" and start saying, "I am." Momentum turns doubt into data. Failure becomes feedback. And consistency becomes character. It's not about one massive leap. It's about showing up so many times that quitting stops making sense. Because the hardest part of any journey isn't starting. It's continuing. Momentum gives you that gift. It carries you when energy fades. It makes effort automatic. That's why you can't rely on motivation. You have to rely on movement. Movement is renewable. Emotion isn't. You can't control when you feel inspired, but you can always control when you move. And motion itself becomes the spark. Momentum makes discipline feel like freedom. Because when you're in flow, you stop forcing outcomes and start partnering with direction. You stop needing certainty, because progress itself becomes proof of alignment. That's what it means to be in rhythm with destiny. Momentum has its own intelligence. It teaches you. It adapts to you. It remembers the rhythm of your effort and multiplied it. That's why once you've built it, it feels spiritual. It's not just physics, it's faith in motion. Momentum is the bridge between belief and manifestation. It carries you through the places where motivation would have left you behind. But here's the paradox. The faster you move, the more resistance you'll meet. Not because you're wrong, but because growth attracts friction. Every layer of your evolution creates new pressure, new lessons, new tests. And that's how the universe asks, can you stay consistent when it's no longer easy? Because motion is only power when it's maintained. Momentum without discipline turns into chaos. But momentum guided by clarity turns into destiny. You can't hold momentum through willpower alone. You hold it through rhythm. Rhythm is how you make motion sustainable. It's the art of resting without quitting. It's the science of recovery with intention. The same energy that creates progress must also know how to preserve it. That's the paradox again. You build speed not by rushing, but by balancing. You build longevity not by fighting the tide, but by learning its pattern. Every strong mover knows momentum isn't about movement alone, it's about mastery. Mastery means you know when to accelerate and when to breathe, when to push forward and when to trust the pull. Because destiny isn't a straight line. It's a spiral. Each turn brings you closer to the center of who you are. That's why you'll sometimes feel like you're moving in circles. You're not. You're deepening. The same lessons return until your reactions evolve. That's growth disguised as repetition. And momentum ensures you never get stuck there too long. Because movement itself creates awareness. Each forward step reveals the step after. Momentum makes the unknown familiar. You stop waiting for clarity, because you've learned that clarity lives in continuation. That's the moment you realize you're no longer chasing progress. You are progressing. Your movement becomes a message. Your consistency becomes character. And that's when confidence stops being emotion and starts being evidence. Momentum doesn't just carry you forward, it changes your shape. You start fitting into spaces you used to be afraid to enter. You start walking into rooms that once intimidated you and realizing you belong there now. That's not arrogance. That's alignment. You've become a match for what you once only imagined. And now, the only question left isn't if you'll keep moving, it's how far you'll go. Because once momentum finds you, it doesn't stop. It keeps teaching you how motion and mastery can coexist in peace. It keeps reminding you that consistency is a form of worship, a devotion to your own becoming. That's the final paradox. The more you move, the less you chase. Because motion itself brings everything that's meant for you closer. You've learned the rhythm of motion. Now you'll learn the art of beginning again, not from failure, but from strength. Chapter 10. The second first step. Life doesn't give you one beginning. It gives you many. Some arrive in celebration. Some arrive in silence. But all of them begin the same way, with loss. Something ends, and suddenly you find yourself staring at what feels like emptiness. But emptiness isn't punishment. It's preparation. It's the space life clears so something truer can take its place. Every ending you feared was never final, it was formative. The collapse you called failure was actually construction. Because you can't rebuild while still holding on to what broke you. That's the quiet mercy of falling apart, it forces honesty. When the old structure crumbles, you finally see what was never stable to begin with. And what remains is what was always real. You don't lose everything when life falls apart. You only lose what wasn't meant to rise with you. That's the first truth of starting over. You're not beginning from nothing, you're beginning from now. The scars you carry aren't signs of weakness. They're the proof that healing worked. Every lesson you earned in the fire becomes the foundation for your next creation. And now you see, rebirth isn't about replacing the past. It's about redeeming it. The old version of you was never a mistake. They were the builder of this new you. You don't have to resent who you were to become who you're meant to be. You just have to thank them and release them. Because the past isn't meant to be carried, it's meant to be understood. Understanding turns pain into peace. Peace turns memory into meaning. And meaning is what gives your second first step its power. You're not moving out of survival anymore. You're moving from awareness. You've fallen before, but now you rise differently. Not with urgency, but with wisdom. Not to prove something, but to become something. That's what makes this beginning stronger. You've learned that starting again doesn't erase what came before, it integrates it. Everything you lost was clearing space for what's next. Everything you failed was training for what's waiting. Nothing was wasted. Not one heartbreak. Not one detour. All of it was direction. The path wasn't broken. It was being built. You just couldn't see it yet. You've survived enough endings to know life doesn't take without returning. It's just that the return rarely looks like what you imagined. Sometimes it arrives as silence. Sometimes it arrives as peace. And sometimes it arrives disguised as another beginning. The second first step isn't about chasing what you lost. It's about creating what you've finally learned to deserve. That's what rebirth means, to rebuild not out of desperation, but out of devotion. To rise without rushing. To rebuild without regret. To move forward without needing the past to apologize first. You're not trying to become the old you again. You're learning how to live without the fear that built the old you. The second first step feels different because it's rooted in truth. You're no longer building from pain. You're building from power. You've stopped searching for closure and started choosing clarity. Because closure is something the past gives you. Clarity is something you give yourself. You don't need the apology anymore. You've given yourself understanding. You don't need the old version of success. You're defining a new one. And in this new version of you, there's no rush. Because you've learned that time bends for those who move with purpose. You no longer beg for perfect timing, you create it. This is what freedom feels like. Not control. Not chaos. Peace through participation. You start to see that every fall wasn't failure, it was a rehearsal. Every heartbreak was stretching your capacity to love. Every ending was shaping your readiness to begin again. And now you finally understand why it all had to happen, so you could meet yourself here, whole, awake, and ready. Ready not to chase life, but to live it. Ready not to fear failure, but to welcome refinement. Ready not to start over, but to continue forward, stronger, softer, and certain. This is your second first step. And it's not too late. It never was. Because life doesn't measure you by how many times you fall. It measures you by how many times you remember you can rise. The second first step isn't proof that you failed. It's proof that you're still becoming. That you still believe in more. That even after everything, you still choose movement. And that choice is what makes you unstoppable. Because destiny doesn't reward the flawless. It rewards the faithful. Faithful to progress. Faithful to presence. Faithful to becoming. And the moment you step again, the moment you move with new clarity, life begins to move with you. You can feel it already, the ground beneath you steady, the path unfolding, the future listening. This is not a restart. It's a renewal. You're not back where you began. You're back where you belong, wiser, lighter, alive. You've learned to move, to rebuild, to begin again. Now it's time to see how every choice, every moment of courage, was never random. It was leading you here. Chapter 11. Decision as Destiny. Every story you've ever lived was built from a single moment of decision. Every turn, every loss, every breakthrough, it all began when you said yes to something or stayed silent when life asked a question. That's how destiny speaks. Not through miracles, but through moments that ask for motion. You've been answering it your whole life, even when you thought you were waiting. Because not choosing is still a choice. Every hesitation rewrites the path. Every act of courage redraws the map. And somewhere between those moments, your life began to take its shape. That's what destiny really is, not a plan waiting for you to find it, but a pattern forming through what you decide to honor. You've been an artist all along. Every action is a brushstroke. Every choice is a color. You just couldn't see the full picture yet. Because destiny doesn't show itself to the undecided. It reveals itself one decision at a time. You didn't stumble into this moment by accident. You chose your way here, through every risk, every failure, every second chance. Even your waiting had purpose. Because every delay you regret taught you the value of motion. Every fear you fought taught you the weight of courage. And every time you lost your way, you found another reason to continue. That's how destiny hides itself. In the details of direction. In the small daily decisions that seem meaningless, until you look back and realize they were everything. That's the mirror of decisions. You never recognize the divine until you've walked far enough to see the pattern. And when you finally do, it hits you. You were never waiting for destiny. Destiny was waiting for you. It was waiting for your movement, your participation, your permission. The universe doesn't reward thinkers. It rewards movers. Because motion is how faith becomes visible. When you decide, you activate the unseen. You open doors you can't explain, and align opportunities you couldn't have planned. That's why the smallest decision can become the biggest shift. Every time you choose with intention, life rearranges itself to meet you. That's the language of destiny, response. Not reward. Not a coincidence. Response. It listens to movement. It mirrors momentum. And it multiplies belief. Destiny doesn't arrive. It unfolds. It's not an event. It's an accumulation, the sum of every yes, every no, and every not yet. It's the 1,000 small moments where you said I'll try again when giving up would have been easier. That's the quiet truth of greatness. It's built in the seconds no one sees. Because the world claps for outcomes, but destiny listens for effort. It hears how you show up when no one's watching. It sees the choices you make when no one's there to praise them. That's where character turns into calling. Every small act of courage is a signature on your future. Every moment you resist fear and choose to move anyway, are you shaping the direction of your story? That's why you never truly lose control. Even when life feels unpredictable, your decisions are the anchor. You may not control the storm, but you choose whether to stand or surrender. And every stand rewrites the ending. Because choice isn't just about direction, it's about declaration. When you decide, you tell life what version of you is in charge. You stop living from reaction and start living from authorship. You stop asking for signs and start becoming one. That's when your life shifts, when you realize decisions don't predict destiny. They create it. You can feel it in your chest, that click when you finally decide. Everything inside you aligns. Your breath deepens. Your path clears. Because clarity doesn't come from thinking. It comes from choosing. Choice creates movement. Movement creates meaning. Meaning becomes direction. That's the holy pattern. It's not luck. It's alignment. Life meets you at the level of your decision. Not your potential. Not your plans. Your decision. Because decision is energy. And energy commands reality. Everything you want already exists in potential form. Your decision is what gives it permission to materialize. The universe doesn't resist you. It responds to you. And if you don't decide, it assumes you're content where you are. That's the silent rule of creation. What you tolerate, you teach to stay. But the moment you choose differently, you reprogram everything. You stop negotiating with comfort. You stop apologizing for evolution. And you start becoming the version of you your future has been waiting to meet. That's a decision as destiny. It's the moment you stop chasing signs and start giving direction. It's the instant you realize that what you've been praying for, I have been waiting for your participation. You've always been powerful enough. You just needed to stop delaying permission. You've always been guided. You just needed to start walking. Because purpose doesn't arrive in comfort. It meets you mid-motion. Every decision, every small, quiet yes, is a seed of destiny. Some bloom in days. Some take years. But none of them die. They wait patiently for the conditions you create. That's why you must keep choosing, even when you don't see the harvest. Because destiny is cumulative. It's built through consistency, not a coincidence. And the more you decide with faith, the more life begins to obey. Faith isn't waiting for proof. It's moving as if proof is inevitable. That's what a decision looks like in motion. It's not loud. It's deliberate. It's not emotional. It's eternal. Every great life you've ever admired wasn't luck. It was a series of small, uncomfortable decisions, made by someone who refused to wait for permission. That's the pattern you now embody. You are no longer waiting for life to choose you. You're choosing life. And that decision, that quiet, private yes, is rewriting everything. You're not reacting to what happens. You're shaping what happens next. You've moved from survival to strategy, from hesitation to harmony. And this harmony isn't the absence of struggle. It's the mastery of response. You no longer ask, why me? You ask, what now? That shift alone is evolution. Because destiny doesn't require perfect plans. It requires persistent decisions. One choice, then another, and another, until your direction becomes your identity. And one day you'll realize, you don't chase purpose anymore. You have a purpose. Every word you speak carries weight. Every step you take carries alignment. That's what decision does. It roots power in presence. And presence is where all creation begins. The greatest act of courage isn't saying yes to the world. It's saying yes to yourself. Because once you do, everything else starts saying yes too. Your relationships shift. Your opportunities expand. Your path clears. Not because it got easier, but because you stopped resisting it. That's how destiny rewards decision. Not with applause, but with alignment. Not with ease, but with evidence. You begin to realize you were never fighting for control. you are learning to cooperate with creation. And creation responds to confidence. When you decide, you tell the universe, I trust what comes next. And that trust is what pulls destiny closer. You're here now, on the other side of doubt. You've learned that beginnings are holy, that movement is sacred, and that every decision is an act of becoming. Look at what you've built, not just the progress, but the presence. Look at how your silence turned into clarity, how your hesitation became hunger, how your confusion became calling. You didn't find destiny. You created it. Every detour was designed. Every delay was direction. Every heartbreak was a hammer shaping your strength. And every decision was destiny revealing itself in motion. Now, when you look back, you see the pattern. You see how every chapter, the waiting, the fear, the rebuilding, was not punishment, but preparation. You were being built, not broken. And this moment right here, is proof. Because you didn't just survive your indecision. You mastered it. You learned that hesitation doesn't protect you. It imprisons you. And you broke the lock. You learned that movement isn't a risk. It's a revelation. And you've stepped into it, fully, freely, faithfully. You've become the author now. No longer waiting for clarity, but creating it. No longer seeking direction, but walking it. No longer wishing for purpose, but being it. This is the power you've always carried. Not in the noise of the world, but in the whisper of your own will. Every decision has written your destiny. And now it's time to decide again. The moment you decide, you don't need another sign. You don't need another plan. You don't need another reason to believe. You just need to decide. Because the moment you decide, the universe rearranges itself. It stops asking what you want and starts responding to what you've chosen. Everything begins to shift, quietly at first, then all at once. The right people appear. The right lessons return. The right paths align. Not because destiny changed, but because you did. You moved from waiting to walk. From hoping to building. From wondering to know. That's how life opens, not with permission, but with participation. Every decision you make is an act of faith. A declaration that says, I'm done waiting for the world to move first. You are the movement. And that movement creates meaning. Because what if destiny was never a finish line? What if it was every step you took in trust? What if you've already been living it, moment by moment, choice by choice, heartbeat by heartbeat? You'll never need to know every outcome. You just need to choose the next motion. And trust that motion to reveal what waiting never could. That's how life rewards you. Not with perfection, but with progression. Not with answers, but with alignment. Because destiny is not found, it's formed. And you've been forming yours all along. You're not behind. You're becoming. You're not late. You're learning timing. You're not starting over. You're starting true. This is your moment. This is your decision. To stop doubting. To stop delaying. To stop dimming. And to simply say, I'm ready now. Not perfectly ready. Not fully certain. Just ready enough to begin. Because the moment you decide, the path reveals itself. And from that moment on, everything changes. The noise fades. The resistance softens. The weight lifts. You start to see life for what it's always been, a series of invitations waiting for your yes. So say yes. Say it softly. Say it bravely. Say it completely. Say it until the world responds. Say it until your silence feels like strength. Say it until your peace becomes power. Because every decision is destiny in disguise. And this right here, is the moment you decide. If this message spoke to you, share it. Subscribe. Keep listening. This is Beyond the Noise Studio.